July 25th, 2026, a Ukrainian drone struck an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea. One sailor was killed, another was injured, and the explosion didn't just rip through a cargo vessel, it may have blown open a door that nobody can close. Iran has promised retaliation. Tehran's foreign minister says Ukraine acted at Israel's behest to drag Europe into its war. End of quote. Iran has summoned Ukraine's top diplomat, and the Iranian government has warned of unforeseen consequences that will certainly not go unanswered. This is no longer two separate wars. What we are watching is the Russia-Ukraine war, the US-Iran war, the Saudi-Houthi war, and the Israel-Iranian shadow war, all colliding into one. The question isn't whether this is dangerous. The question is, how close are we to the point of no return? Let's start with the facts. On July 25th, Ukrainian forces carried out long-range drone strikes on the Caspian Sea. The target, an Iranian vessel that Ukraine Security Services, the SBU, says was transporting military cargo between Iran and Russia while evading international sanctions. President Zelensky didn't hide. He went on social media and announced it himself, and quote, "We achieved very good results from long-range strikes at the waters of the Caspian Sea." End of quote. He wrote, specifying that the target included a ship transporting military cargo in cooperation with Iran. Iran's response was immediate and furious. Tehran claimed the ship was a commercial vessel, not military, and that one sailor was killed and another injured. Iran summoned Ukraine's chargé d'affaires in Tehran and condemned the strikes as an act of aggression that could further inflame and expand the flames of war. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi went further. He accused Zelensky of a blatant UN Charter violation done at Israel's behest to drag Europe into its war. End of quote. He made calls to the EU's Kaja Kallas and Russia's Sergei Lavrov and stated plainly, and I quote, "What the freeloader in Kiev did cannot go unanswered." End of quote. So we have a confirmed strike, a confirmed death, a diplomatic summons, and a public promise of retaliation from a country that is already at war with the United States. This is not hypothetical. This happened, and the consequences are already unfolding. To understand why Ukraine did this, you have to understand what Iran and Russia have been doing together. And Zelensky just revealed the full picture. In his announcement, Zelensky dropped a bombshell. He said that since the beginning of July, Russia has been actively using satellites to surveil Gulf states and US military facilities in the Middle East, and then sharing those images directly with Iran. Zelensky named names. On July 19th and 20th alone, Russian satellites targeted 4 air bases, 2 in Bahrain, 1 in Jordan, and 1 in Kuwait. And there is, in Zelensky's word, a clear correlation between Russia's satellite imagery of these sites and Iranian strikes, both before the attacks, in preparation for them, and afterwards to assess the damage inflicted. Think about what that means. Russia isn't just selling Iran's drones. Russia isn't just buying Iranian missiles. Russia is acting as Iran's reconnaissance service, spotting American targets, feeding coordinates to Tehran, and helping Iran prosecute its war against the United States. From Ukrainians' perspective, the Russian-Iran alliance is not theoretical, it is operational. It is lethal, and it is targeting the same Western alliance that arms and funds Ukraine's defense. So Ukraine took the fight to the Caspian Sea, more than 600 miles from the front line, using the same long-range drone capability that has already devastated Russia's oil infrastructure and created nationwide fuel shortages inside Russia. But this strike didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened while the United States and Iran are already at war. Since February 2026, the US and Iran had been engaged in direct military conflict. Daily strikes, American bases hit, Iranian nuclear and military facilities bombed, the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, closed by Iran. As of late July, the daily attacks have paused. A memorandum of understanding collapsed. The nearly 2 weeks of strikes stopped on Friday, but nobody believes the war is over. The US has imposed a maritime blockade on Iran in the Indian Ocean. Oman and Iran are negotiating over the Strait of Hormuz, and sources tell the Associated Press that a deal is being negotiated that would allow Iran to run vessel transit with fewer restrictions. And here's where Ukraine's timing becomes critical. Zelensky is reportedly scheduled to meet with President Trump in Washington next week. Ukraine needs American weapons, Patriot air defense interceptors, long-range missiles, artillery shells. By striking an Iranian ship and exposing Russia's satellite intelligence sharing with Tehran, Zelensky is making a case to Washington. We are fighting the same enemy. We are part of the same war. Arm us accordingly. But the Ukraine-Iran collision isn't the only front opening up. In the same week, the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen hit 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea. Saudi Arabia responded by striking the Yemeni port city of Hodeidah. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, is another vital choke point. It connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. Saudi Arabia has relied on it to export oil and bypass the closed Strait of Hormuz. Now it's a shooting gallery. So let's count the active conflicts that just got connected. Russia versus Ukraine, US versus Iran, Saudi Arabia versus the Houthis, Israel versus Iran, and now Ukraine versus Iran. 5 conflicts, 1 network of alliances, 1 shared battle space. As Hamidreza Azizi, an Iranian expert at the SWP Berlin think tank, wrote, and I quote, "With each passing day, the war is evolving into an increasingly complex, multidimensional, and international conflict," end of quote. So what happens now? Iran has promised retaliation, and Iran has options. Option 1, direct military strikes. Iran could attack Ukraine-linked vessels in other sea lanes, the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, anywhere Ukrainian grain or cargo ships operate. Tehran could also launch missile or drone strike against Ukrainian infrastructure using the same Shahid drones it supplies to Russia. Option 2, diplomatic escalation. Iran could formally recognize Crimea and the Donbass as Russian territory, a symbolic but powerful move that would align Tehran even more closely with Moscow and further isolate Ukraine diplomatically. Option 3, asymmetric warfare. Iran is worried, and experts confirm this, that Ukrainian intelligence service may begin supporting ethnic insurgent groups inside Iran, similar to how Kyiv has supported anti-Assad forces in Syria. If Ukraine starts arming Kurdish, Baloch or Azeri separatists inside Iran, Tehran faces a domestic insurgency backed by a nation with advanced drone and electronic warfare capabilities. And then there is the diplomatic pressure. Iran is already leaning on European countries to hold Ukraine accountable. Tehran wants the EU to condemn the strike, sanction Ukraine, or at least distance itself from Zelensky's actions. If Europe hesitates, Iran will use that hesitation to fracture Western unity. If Europe backs Ukraine, Iran will use that to justify its own escalation. Which brings us to the questions in the title. Are we about to have World War III? Let's be precise. William Spaniel, a political science professor at the University of Pittsburgh, argued in March that the blurring of battle lines has, and I quote, effectively merged the Russia-Ukraine war and the Iran war into a single conflict, end of quote. But he added a critical caveat, and I quote, "We are still not at a true world war, as there is no one actor fighting in 2 fronts simultaneously like the United States during World War II," end of quote. That is the technical definition. World War II saw Germany fighting in Europe and North Africa, Japan fighting in Asia and the Pacific, and the United States fighting in both theaters at once. Right now, Russia is fighting Ukraine, the US is fighting Iran, Ukraine just struck Iran, but no single nation is yet engaged in full-scale war on 2 separate continents against 2 separate enemies. However, the architecture of a world war is being built in real time. The US is trying to form what experts call, and I quote, a ring of economic and military pressure, end of quote, around Iran. The Indian Ocean blockade, the Caspian Sea strikes, the Red Sea conflict, and the Hormuz closure. Russia is feeding Iran intelligence to hit American bases. Iran is arming Russia to kill Ukrainians. Ukraine is now hitting Iranian ships. Saudi Arabia is bombing Iranian proxies in Yemen. Israel has already struck Iranian ports. Every major power is now entangled. The United States, Russia, Iran, Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, Israel, the European Union. China is watching from the sidelines, calculating its entry. India is navigating between Russian oil and American alliance. Turkey is playing every side. The red line that would truly trigger a world war. If Iran retaliates against Ukraine with strikes inside European territory, or if the US-Iran conflict goes nuclear. The US has already used B-2 bombers against Iranian nuclear sites. If Iran responds with weapons of mass destruction, or if Russia formally enters the Iran war in Tehran's side, we cross into territory that looks a lot like 1939. Here's what you need to watch in the next 72 hours. 1. Zelensky's meeting with Trump. If Trump greenlights more long-range strikes inside Iran, or if he publicly backs Ukrainian Caspian Sea operation, Tehran will treat that as a joint US-Ukrainian act of war. Number 2, Iran's actual retaliation. Words are cheap, missiles are not. If Iran strikes a Ukrainian vessel, a Ukrainian port, or a European target, the escalation ladder gets very steep very fast. Number 3, Russia's next move. If Moscow expands its satellite intelligence sharing with Iran, or if Russia warships escort Iranian cargo vessels in the Caspian Sea, the Ukrainian strike becomes the opening salvo of a Russia-Iran joint naval theater. And that is how world wars begin. Not with a single shot, but with a slow, inevitable entanglement of powers who thought they could control the fire. On July 25, 2026, a Ukrainian drone hit an Iranian ship. One sailor died, but the real casualty may have been the illusion that these wars could stay separate. They are now one war, with multiple fronts, multiple armies, and no clear exit. We are not in World War III, not yet, but the walls are down. The alliances are set, and the next strike, whoever fires it, may be the one that makes this global. Drop your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe this video. Tell us what you think, and thank you for watching.